Welcome to Papa's Workshop. This is a busy time of the year, as you might expect. But today I decided to take a little bit of time and do some things that I wanted to get done. And the first thing is, I went ahead and did the law enforcement flag up there, and I'm using a different painting technique. I no longer use the espresso or the ebony stains. That's gone. Different technique I want to show you today. Something else that I want to show you today is the Army logo. That has been sitting around my shop for months, and it was time to get it finished. Not to mention the fact that I wanted to be able to completely redo the background in the shop so you can have a little bit different look. So lots going on, and I still have a laser project that I'm working on as well. So with all that going on, let's get started. To begin with, I need to get all of the different projects cut out. And the first thing I want to do is just square up this end and eliminate that little knot there at the end. Once that is cut, I've already got my stop set up, so all I need to do is just get rid of that little scrap, slide it over, and I can cut the next one. Now this is going to be the union for the flag for this, and this is 8.5 inches by 7 inches. With the union cut out now, I need to get my laser project cut. And this is going to be the width of my 1x12, which in the case that I have is 11.25. So it will be 11.25 by 11.25. And I'll go ahead and set my stop block up now on the other side of my fence, and I'll be ready to cut that. This table saw sled is extremely versatile, and it makes it where it just saves a lot of time, because I can actually pre-measure and make multiple cuts all in the same amount of time. Plus, with the dust collection on there, it makes it even better because it virtually picks up all of the sawdust, and that's a big help in the shop. So with that done now, that takes care of my laser project. That's 11.25 by 11.25. So next is on to cutting the stripes for the flag. Now this flag is going to be 13 by the 24.5. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 1-inch stripes and get all 13 of those cut. Now this board is actually a little bit longer than my 24.5, and I'll take the opportunity to cut it down to the exact measurements in just a few minutes. The nice thing about this, I can get most of my stripes out of the one piece of the 1x12. But then I'll be headed over to the scrap bin to get those last 2 or 3 pieces to be able to cut. Now before I take them over to the miter saw, I want to lay out all of the stripes and make sure they all look good. And you can tell they're at random lengths, and that's okay right now. But there's a couple that I'm going to reject and replace. But this is why I do that. I get everything matched up. I also want the best side facing upward. So this is done now, and it really helps me out to be able to make a better flag. Once I'm happy with it, I just go ahead and mark the surface so that I can remember exactly how I laid it out. Now let's head over to the miter saw. I set up the stop block at my 24.5 inches. That way I can cut the bottom 6 stripes and get those to the exact measurement that I need. Then I'll place a union into the position right there at my stop block and take the other pieces of the wood for my last 7 stripes and cut those. That way I do not have to move the stop block at all. Now it's time to go ahead and lay this out. I also have gone ahead and sanded everything, so this is starting to look like a flag. Now it's time to go ahead and start the painting. To be able to begin this, I want to separate this into 3 different sections. The stripe for the law enforcement, which is blue, is going to be set aside. I'm also going to have a section for the stripes that need to be painted black, and then the remaining stripes I'm going to burn with the torch. So that way I have everything separated into the various groups and no mistakes that way. It's not a good time to make a mistake once I have everything put together. And this makes it so much easier for me to be able to stay organized during this whole process. So now let's go ahead and get the blue stripe, and this one is stained, and I used the Minwax. It's a water-based stain, and this is the true blue that I have used on the flags that I do in the shop. Now there's nothing new with this. I've used this stain for a long time. It's very good. It gives a beautiful color, and I really like this process. So from this standpoint, we're going to leave this alone. Let's move on to the next step. All right, I put all the blue stain away, and now I'm grabbing all of the materials that need to be black. And to do this, the new technique that I'm using is the acrylic paint. And I'm using it really just like stain. I'm putting a good amount onto the surface of the wood, and I'm using in this case, an old sock, but it's just a rag to be able to spread this around. This gives a very even coat. It stains immediately, and it still allows the wood grain to be able to show through. And if it's not quite dark enough, you can always add a little bit more, but this has saved me so much time. Because with the various stains that I've used in the past, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't get the results that I was after. Well, using the acrylic paint, it works perfect every time, and it's much, much faster. And I believe that the results of this are absolutely gorgeous, and it's very, very even. Now as I move on to the stripes, I put all the stripes together and I can stain them at one time. Again, this saves a lot of time, and it's not nearly as messy as working with the stains that I have done in the past. So if you watch some of my other flag videos where I have assembled them, I think you'll pick up right away that this is a much easier, very, very simple process to be able to do. So if you're making flags in your shop, please consider this as one of the best practices that will save you a lot of time and have wonderful, beautiful results. Now for the last group, these are the stripes that need to be torched. And you'll recognize immediately I did not torch the ones that are black. There's really no need. But these stripes for the white definitely will need to be torched. And again, I'm using the same techniques that I've used before. Just taking nice, slow, even strokes to go across to be able to make sure that there's no hot spots, and it's a nice, even burn across the entire stripe. And again, this saves time because you don't need to torch the union or the black stripes. So again, a big time saver in this process. Okay, let's move over to the CNC machine. I've got it set up on the machine, and I'm ready to carve the stars. Now I'm using the 90-degree V-bit to be able to do this, and this is the star file that I have shared on the Inventables project page, and that's free to be able to download and be able to use. I also want to point out that I use the center of this union as my start point for my XY0. With everything set up now, I'm going to go ahead and go through the checklist and begin to carve. I have the depth set so that the star forms that point right at the very bottom. Now if you don't like that, if you want to be able to have the flat bottom, you'll need to be able to make a shallower cut. But for me, my personal preference is I like that nice sharp point at the bottom of the star. As it completes this last final star, it actually returns to the center. I don't have to worry about the bump stop getting cut with it returning back to the bottom left-hand corner. And this is another big advantage that I find using the center as my XY0 position. So here's the finished union, and I think the stars look fantastic. So let's go ahead and get it put into the flag now. Flag looks great, so one project completed. Now I want to move on to my laser project. Now as far as the painting technique, I used the exact same technique. Now I didn't have gray, and that actually worked out to my advantage because I took some white, added just a little bit of black to it, and mixed it. But I didn't completely thoroughly mix it, and that made it where I would have a little bit of streaks and some variation in colors. I'll also wipe this paint on, and that way the wood actually shows through in places, and I love this effect. So what I'm doing right now is going to mark the center, and again on the laser I use the center point as my XY0 position. To set this up and get ready to carve, all I did is I took out the 90-degree V-bit and then I installed the laser. So it's a very quick transition. Next, all I need to do is set my Z height, and I have my little 1/8 inch gauge to be able to do that. And I want you to notice, no clamps required for this. The laser does not need to have the project clamped down. It works just fine without that. Next, all I do is just move the laser down to my XY0 position right in the center, and I have a little fire button that I can hit, and I can manually just line it up. And now you can see maybe in the camera that my little laser light is right on the XY0 position. Now it's time to go ahead and load the file. And this is a file that I designed completely in the Lightburn software. The text that I'm using, again, straight from the Lightburn software. It's a very nice selection of the font. And I have the black that is going to be able to cut. The blue is not. There's no output for the blue, which is the outline of the material itself. I want to point out the green dot right in the center. That is my XY0 position and the start point for the laser. And that's exactly how I have the CNC machine set up. Now all I need to be able to do is select the start, and it's ready to be able to engrave this sign. And while this is happening, I'm going to be able to move on over to yet another project. Now I did make one mistake. The sign was set up for 12 by 12 in the Lightburn software. The board is 11 1/4 by 11 1/4. But because I use the center point, it still will fit on there. It's just a little bit closer to the edge. Again, another reason for using the center. Now while that is engraving, I'm going to go ahead and glue the flag together, and I am using the glue for this. Now it doesn't take a lot of glue, and I put the glue on the back side of these edges, and that way there's virtually no seeping through to the front side. But should I have any, I have the freezer paper down to be able to catch it so the flag does not get glued to the jig. Just a little extra precaution that I like to take. Back to the laser to do a quick check to see how it's engraving, and it's looking great. So while that's continuing on, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the next project. Now I carved this months ago, and this is MDF, medium density fiberboard. And I just tossed it aside and never finished it. But today I'm going to do that. And the first step is, yes, I'm going to spray all the white with the spray can and let it really soak in good, and put several coats on it to have a nice true white. Another quick check on the laser engraving, and you never want to leave this by itself because too many bad things potentially can happen. But it's almost done, so that project will be finished, and it's back to my logo. The paint's dry, it's looking great. Now granted, if I'd have done this all at one time, I would have used the Oramask 813, and it would have made this process a whole lot easier. Now while that paint's drying and the laser's going, I'm going to go ahead and get the flag out of the jig. It's dry and it's ready to come out, and it's going to look great. Now to be able to finish this one up, I'm going to be using a clear coat, which is the spray can clear gloss, to be able to put the finish on it. But I love the results so far. A quick look back at the laser engraving. It also is finished, so I'll be able to spray both of those at the same time. Now let's run over to this project. Now because I didn't use the masking, I've got to do it by hand. But with the white done and the MDF is completely sealed, putting this yellow in is very, very easy. All I need to do is flood this groove with the yellow paint, and it really does not matter if I get some onto the surface because that's going to be covered with the black. So a couple of coats of the yellow to make sure I have really good coverage, and this step will be finished. Now as far as the black, it went on exactly the same way, and because it was cut into the wood, it made putting that black on very, very easy. So now I'm outside and I can put that clear coat on both of these. And unfortunately my trash can is not big enough to be able to support the flag at the same time. But all of this got spray coated with the clear gloss at once. And again, I'm going to put several coats on so that it really looks good and it seals the wood nicely. So a crazy day in the shop, but I've got all three of the projects finished. This Army logo looks fantastic. My laser engraving sign is still a little bit wet, so I can't show that right now. It looks fantastic. And I have my flag on the wall and everything's rearranged. So I'm real happy with how it turned out today.